Welcome back to Smith History, separating the Smith from the myth. I'm your host, Brian Smith, and today, if you're looking for objective journalism, you might want to skip this episode because there's absolutely no way I can hide the pride in my voice as I tell this Smith story. This is the story of February 10th, 1993, the day my dad, Lester Smith, became front page news. And knowing Dad, that probably annoyed him more than anything else. You see, my dad never told my wife Patty or me about this true story. Not really. There was no dramatic retelling over dinner. No casual, oh by the way, I saved 3 lives today, dropped into the conversation. That wasn't his style. Here's what separates the Smith from the myth. If it weren't for front page headlines, the radio reports, and a Rotary Club plaque I didn't even know existed until the end of his life, this story would have been lost to history, at least from my point of view. Just another day in the life of my dad, Lester Lee Smith. Just another example of doing the right thing. Because to Dad, that was his civic duty. The right thing. No fanfare required. But let me tell you what actually happened on that cold winter day on Route 4, just south of Bucyrus, Ohio. It was shortly after 1 p.m. Dad was doing what he did every day, driving Route 4 between his home and his job at Alder Care Nursing Home in Marion. He was 60 years old, probably thinking about his shift ahead, maybe wondering what Mom was making for dinner. The normal stuff. And then he saw it. A 1985 Nissan losing control, going off the road, slamming into the ditch, the engine catching fire. Now here's where most people's brains go into calculation mode. Someone else will stop. That looks dangerous. I'm sure emergency services are on the way. But my dad's thinking, apparently wired differently. The news article says Dad was only on Route 4 that day because he had to swing by the chiropractor's office on his way home. Talk about sliding door moments. Wrong turn, right place, right time. Or maybe exactly where he was supposed to be. My wife Patty said it best years later. Dad was a man of action. And she was right. But where did that come from? Well, let me paint you a picture. Imagine being 18 years old and getting shipped halfway around the world to Okinawa, Japan. The Korean War was raging. You're not thinking about college or career paths. You're thinking about survival, combat training, combat action. He was a staff sergeant by age 20. And when he wasn't in combat training or seeing action, he was apparently seeing action with geisha girls at the army base. Now, Dad never talked much about that part either, but I found the photos. Our dad had game. By the time he returned to Marion, Ohio, he'd seen more of life and death than most people see in a lifetime. He married my mother, started a family, and continued in the reserves for years. Then came me, son number 1. Then 3 more boys, 4.5 years. And Mom became the drill sergeant at home. But Dad, he had already honed his combat experience with 4 boys under 5 years old. That's psychological warfare right there, if we're being honest. So, February 10th, 1993, Dad sees the car go into the ditch. Engine on fire. 3 women trapped inside. Angel Keith, 17, her mother Julie, 33, and their friend Teresa Dagger, 16. All injured, all in danger. Dad did not hesitate. He was the first one there, the first to realize the full scope of the danger. That engine was still running, smoke pouring out, flames starting to spread. The newspaper report said Dad flagged down a man named Gatchell, then ran to the car and shut off the engine. Think about that. He ran toward the burning car, reached inside, turned off the ignition. Jerry Gatchell would later say, "All we had was sandbags in the back of my truck. They threw sand on the hood to control the fire while trying to free the victims." Angel had hit her face on the steering wheel. Gatchell was trying to free her legs from underneath the dash by thick smoke. Angel said, "I don't want to die." And she was told, "You're not going to die. We're going to get you out." Meanwhile, Karen Lenthy had also stopped. She also threw sand on the hood of the car to control the fire. Someone else arrived with a fire blanket. He literally put it over Angel's face while they freed her from the car. They also had to extinguish flames on Gatchell's pants, which had caught fire. And Dad, he was right there in the thick of it, 60 years old, helping to pull and carry 3 seriously injured women from a burning vehicle before emergency workers could arrive. The women were later transported by medical helicopter. All in a day's work. So here's the thing about heroes. Real heroes, not the movie kind. They don't wait around for the press conference. They don't post about it on social media. They don't even necessarily tell their families. Dad went to work, came home. He definitely had dinner, maybe watched some sports. A month later, the Bucyrus Rotary Club, that's Rotary International, one of the world's largest service organizations. It was founded in 1905. They honored my dad, Gatchell, and Lenthy. They called them 3 very average people who were just going about their everyday activities. But there was nothing average about what they did. And there was even a reunion with the crash victims at the dinner. Front page news again. And Patty and I knew none of this. Zero. Zilch. Nada. And when did I find out about the banquet? Years later, when Dad gave me the plaque at the end of his life. He just handed it to me, casual as could be. Let me read the inscription. Presented to Lester Smith, Bucyrus Rotary Club expresses its gratitude by recognition of your life-saving action on February 10th, 1993. There's that word action again. And that was it. That's all the fanfare he needed. Here's what gets me about this story, about my dad and the way he lived his life. Rotary President Tom Moore said, "A community needs to have the opportunity to thank people for meritorious duty, especially when it involves the saving of lives." But did Dad need that recognition? Did he do it for the headlines, the plaque, the dinner? Well, maybe for the dinner, but you already know the answer. Dad was the leader of our family. And here's what separates the Smith from the myth. It wasn't just him. Mom brought her Butterman legacy of discipline, family recipes, and traditions. She brought the structure, the foundation, the Sunday dinners, and the disciplinary philosophy of because I said so. Dad brought his quiet demeanor. He gave us the love of sports and his work ethic, that Army sense of duty and action over words. And together, they were two simple people who first met in Marion, Ohio in 1953. They founded and grounded a family that continues to grow today. 5 sons, all with college degrees. Business builders, law-abiding citizens, pillars of their communities. Now that doesn't happen by accident. But it took an accident, one that made headlines, for that quiet resilience and those foundational family values to be made known to anyone outside our family. Think about the irony. Dad probably influenced hundreds of people through quiet acts of kindness, probably made a difference in ways we'll never know. But we have proof. On February 10th, 1993, we have the headlines. I have the plaque. We have the story of 3 women, Angel, Julie, and Teresa, who went home to their families that night because 3 strangers stopped to help. And the first stranger, the one who saw the danger and ran toward it, that was my dad. The legacy: 5 sons, multiple grandchildren, a legacy of service, education, and community involvement that spans generations now. Our dad passed away on February 20th, 2019, in February, as fate would have it, 26 years and 10 days after his moment in the headlines. But here's the thing about real heroes. Their legacy isn't measured in plaques or newspaper articles. It's measured in the values they pass down, the example they set, the way they show up when it matters. Dad showed up that day on Route 4, not for recognition, not for reward, just because that's what you do, that's who you are. So, what separates the Smith from the myth? Here's what I've learned putting together these episodes. The myth is the story we tell ourselves about who we think we should be. The ideal, the legend, the larger-than-life figure. The Smith, well, the Smith is who we actually are when nobody's watching. When there are no cameras, no headlines, no plaque waiting at the end. The Smith is seeing a car in a ditch and not calculating the cost of stopping. The Smith is pulling injured strangers from a burning vehicle at age 60 without asking, what's in it for me? The Smith is receiving a Rotary Club honor and never mentioning it to your kids. The Smith is living your values so quietly, so consistently, that they don't seem like values at all. They just seem like the daily thing to do. My dad was a Smith through and through. Army veteran, employee at Marion Power Shovel for over 30 years, and later in his life, a healthcare worker, a father of 5, a husband, a grandfather, a hero. And if my pride shows through this narration, I won't apologize. Dad taught us that you don't need to toot your own horn, but that doesn't mean someone else can't do it for you. So consider this me finally tooting his horn. My dad, on February 10th, 1993, a day like any other, except for 3 families who got their loved ones back because a quiet man with a strong sense of duty happened to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The myth might have made headlines that day, but the Smith has been making history all along. Thanks for listening to this very personal episode of Smith History, separating the Smith from the myth. And if you have a Smith in your life, someone who does the right thing without fanfare, who leads by example, who runs toward the fire instead of away from it, take a moment today to tell them. Or better yet, tell everyone else about them, because they won't do it themselves. Till next time, my name is Brian Smith, and remember, not all heroes make the front page, but on February 10th, 1993, one did. This podcast is dedicated to my dad, Lester Smith, man of action, man of few words, man of the greatest generation, and one hell of a Smith.